On June 25, 2009, the world stopped. Michael Jackson, the most famous entertainer on the planet, was rushed to the hospital with no pulse. Within minutes, the news spread everywhere. Michael was gone. People cried in their cars, in their living rooms, on sidewalks. It felt impossible. How could someone who seemed larger than life leave so suddenly? But the real shock was not the fact that he died. It was how he died. The man who spent his whole life giving everything to the world took his last breath in a room that was supposed to protect him, and the person responsible for his safety was the same person who made the fatal mistake that ended his life. Then came the part that hit even harder. Michael did not fall apart in a single night. His final day was only the end of a long and painful struggle that started decades earlier. A struggle hidden behind bright lights, #1 hits, and the smile he always tried to hold. To understand how the greatest star of our time reached this point, we have to go back. Back to the years when pain first entered his life. Michael Jackson did not grow up dreaming of fame. He grew up trying to survive it. Long before he moonwalked across stages, he was a small boy standing in a crowded living room in Gary, Indiana, singing on command for a father who believed fear created discipline. Joe Jackson pushed his sons the way a drill sergeant pushes soldiers. Mistakes were not corrected with advice. They were corrected with a belt. Michael learned early that love and approval were rewards you earned, not something you received for free. He talked about those days years later with a calm voice, but everyone could hear the sadness underneath. He said he would hide in the closet to cry so no one could see him. He said he felt sick before rehearsals because he never knew what would happen if he missed a step. On stage, he was a miracle. At home, he was a child who flinched whenever his father entered the room. And the strange part was this: the more talented Michael became, the harsher everything felt. The Jackson 5 exploded in popularity almost overnight. Hit records, sold-out shows, screaming fans. The world loved the little boy, with the perfect voice and the shy smile. But Michael was not allowed to be a child anymore. He worked long hours, traveled from city to city, slept on buses, woke up to rehearsals, photo shoots, interviews, and more rehearsals, while other kids were learning who they were. Michael was learning how to perform. That loss followed him for the rest of his life. It shaped the way he trusted people. It shaped his fear of conflict. It shaped the way he tried to build soft, gentle places for himself as an adult. This is the part of his story that people often forget. The man the world saw at the top of the charts started as a boy who never got to live his own childhood. And that missing piece changed everything that came later. Because when you grow up with fear, pressure, and no room to breathe, the world may see a superstar, but inside, you still feel like the kid who never had control over anything. Michael carried that wound quietly, but it stayed with him, even when the spotlight became blinding. And to understand how that wound slowly led him into the storms ahead, we need to move forward into the years when he became the biggest star on earth, yet felt more alone than ever. When Michael Jackson stepped into adulthood, the world saw a superstar rising at a speed no one had ever witnessed. Off the Wall, Thriller, and Bad turned him into a global phenomenon. He broke records, earned awards, and created music videos that changed the industry forever. Everywhere he went, crowds formed. Every move he made became news. But behind that historic success was a man whose life was getting harder, not easier. Fame did not fix his childhood wounds. It only hid them, and sometimes it made them worse. In the mid-1980s, Michael began noticing pale spots on his skin. At first, he tried to cover them with makeup. Then the spots spread to his hands, his face, and his neck. He learned he had vitiligo, a medical condition that destroys skin pigment. It was painful not only physically, but emotionally. Instead of compassion, the media claimed he was changing his skin on purpose. Rumors of skin bleaching flooded tabloids. Jokes were made on late-night shows. People debated his appearance as if it were entertainment. Michael said many years later that this period hurt him deeply. He wanted to explain, but he feared no one would believe him. Then came the Pepsi commercial accident in 1984. During a live filming, a pyrotechnic blast set his hair on fire. He suffered serious burns on his scalp, injuries that required surgeries and long recovery. Doctors prescribed pain medication to help him heal. No one knew these pills would follow him for the rest of his life. At the same time, his face became a constant target. People made comments about his nose, his jawline, his changing appearance. They claimed he was trying to erase his identity, when in truth, Michael battled insecurity and pressure to look perfect under the spotlight. He admitted he had plastic surgery, but the world insisted on adding more stories, more theories, more attacks. By the late 1980s, Michael Jackson was the biggest entertainer alive, yet he lived in a world where the loudest voices were not cheering fans, but critics, picking apart his body, his past, and his every choice. This was the moment when the walls around him began to close in. And soon, the pressure would turn into something far more destructive. To understand how everything changed, we need to step into the year 1993, the moment when Michael's private pain exploded into a public storm that he never fully escaped. In 1993, Michael Jackson faced the moment that changed his life forever. The year began with new music, new projects, and another world tour. He should have been celebrating. Instead, everything collapsed overnight. A family accused Michael of harming their son. The story spread faster than anyone could react. Headlines exploded. Reporters camped outside his home. Television hosts debated his character every night. And almost instantly, the world split into two sides. Michael denied everything. He said the claims were not true, that he would never hurt a child. But the investigation moved forward, and what came next left scars that never healed. Police requested a full-body search to compare marks on his skin with statements from the accuser. Michael said later that this was one of the most humiliating experiences of his life. Under the weight of the media storm, his insomnia grew worse. His anxiety rose. Performances became harder to complete. Doctors increased his medication to help him cope. By the end of the year, he entered a treatment center for dependency on painkillers and stress. No criminal charges were filed against him. The case ended in a civil settlement arranged by lawyers. But even with no conviction, the damage was permanent. Fans were confused. Critics became louder. And Michael felt the world turn colder. Behind closed doors, he struggled to understand how quickly life had shifted. One day, he was the most loved entertainer on the planet. The next day, he was the center of a scandal that refused to fade. He later said he felt betrayed, targeted, and judged without a chance to speak his truth. This moment marked the beginning of a slow and painful decline in his emotional health. The trust he once had in the world was gone. The freedom he once felt was replaced by fear, and the loneliness he carried since childhood began to grow heavier. But the worst part was this. Michael believed he could rebuild. He believed he could move forward. He believed the storm would pass. Instead, 10 years later, it returned even stronger, dragging him into another battle that nearly destroyed everything he had left. To see how the next chapter unfolded, we need to move to the year 2003, when the past came back with a force he never expected. A decade after the first scandal, Michael Jackson tried to rebuild his life. He worked on music, raised his children, and tried to find peace inside Neverland, the place he created to feel safe. But in 2003, everything he had rebuilt came crashing down again. It started with a documentary filmed by journalist Martin Bashir. Michael agreed to it, hoping to show the world who he really was behind the headlines. But when the documentary aired, the tone was completely different from what he expected. Certain scenes were edited in a way that made him look strange and irresponsible. The public reaction was fierce, and the media attacked him with new energy. Shortly after, a second family came forward with accusations. Michael denied the claims, just like he had in 1993. But this time, the situation grew far more serious. He was arrested, charged, and forced to face a full criminal trial. The world watched every second. The cameras outside the courthouse made the case feel less like justice and more like a public show. Inside the courtroom, prosecutors presented their arguments. Michael's lawyers fought back. Witnesses came and went. Many stories fell apart under cross-examination. Former employees admitted they had been paid for interviews. Some claims contradicted real timelines. And slowly, the case began to crumble. But even as the trial weakened, the emotional toll on Michael grew stronger. He lost weight. He barely slept. Some days, he needed help just to stand. Friends said he looked like a man carrying more than fear. He was carrying years of attacks, pressure, and exhaustion. Then, on June 13, 2005, the verdict was announced. Michael Jackson was found not guilty on every charge, all 10 counts. He walked out of the courtroom, a free man. But he was not the same man who walked in. The trial left deep marks on his reputation, his finances, and his health. Neverland no longer felt like a home. The magic was gone. Michael eventually moved away, trying to escape the pain and the memories. But the damage stayed with him. This was the moment when the world finally saw what fame and suspicion had done to him. Yet even after all of this, he still tried to rise again. To understand the final stretch of his life, we need to look at what happened when his body began to break down and his financial world started falling apart. After the 2005 trial, Michael Jackson walked away a free man, but the cost was enormous. Years of legal battles, canceled projects, and non-stop media pressure left him in a difficult financial place. Even someone as successful as Michael could not escape the weight of lawsuits, security expenses, staff costs, and the huge upkeep of Neverland. By the late 2000s, he owed millions. Financial advisors urged him to sell assets. Debt piled up, and the more the public judged him, the harder it became to secure business deals or sponsorships. Neverland, the one place that once gave him joy, was partly sold and eventually shut down. For Michael, losing that home felt like losing another piece of himself. At the same time, his health was slipping fast. The injuries from the Pepsi accident years earlier still caused chronic pain. Surgeries had left nerve damage. Stress made everything worse. And after decades of performing, traveling, and sleepless nights, his body was simply worn down. Michael developed severe insomnia. Not the kind that keeps a person awake for a night or two. This was something deeper. He sometimes stayed awake for days. Doctors tried different treatments. Some worked briefly. Most did not. This struggle led him to rely heavily on doctors, and doctors often relied on more medication than he should have taken. Still, Michael wanted to work. He wanted one more chance to prove himself to the world, one more opportunity to feel alive on stage. When the idea of the This Is It concert series came up, he believed it could be the comeback that saved everything. Money problems would improve, his confidence would return. The world would see the man he still believed he was. But behind the excitement and rehearsals, those closest to him saw a different picture. Michael looked tired. His body moved slower. His nerves were fragile. He pushed himself, but the cost was clear. He kept going anyway. This comeback was not just for the world. It was for him, for the boy who never got to control his own life, for the man who spent years defending himself, for the father who wanted to rebuild a future for his children. But the truth was harsh. Michael was running on empty, and the closer he got to opening night, the more his body signaled that something was wrong. To understand how everything reached its breaking point, we have to move into his final days, when exhaustion and medical mistakes created a tragedy no one could undo. As the This Is It rehearsals continued in 2009, Michael Jackson pushed himself with everything he had left. He wanted the show to be perfect. He wanted the world to see that he was still the performer they remembered. Some nights, he looked strong and focused. Other nights, he looked tired, thin, and overwhelmed. People around him noticed the pressure building. Michael worried constantly. He feared disappointing fans. He feared he would not be ready in time. And more than anything, he feared failing in front of the whole world. But the biggest problem was something no rehearsal could fix. Michael could not sleep. Not a few hours. Not even a full night. He suffered from severe insomnia that had followed him for years. Without sleep, he could not rehearse. Without rehearsals, the show could fall apart. And without the show, he would face even more financial trouble. This is where Dr. Conrad Murray entered the picture. Murray was hired to help Michael stay healthy during the intense preparation period, but instead of helping him rest naturally, he began using strong medication to force sleep. One of those drugs was propofol, a powerful sedative normally used in hospitals for surgeries, not in a bedroom. Michael wanted rest so badly that he relied on Murray more each night. It became a routine that should never have happened. And every time Michael asked for more help, Murray agreed instead of saying no. On the night of June 25th, everything went wrong. Michael could not sleep, just like many nights before. Murray gave him multiple medications, trying to calm him, but the combination became too dangerous. At some point after midnight, Michael's breathing slowed. Then, it stopped. When Murray realized what had happened, it was too late. Paramedics arrived, but Michael had already gone into cardiac arrest. At the hospital, doctors tried everything, but his heart never came back. The world learned the news within hours. Fans cried in the streets. Television screens played nothing but tributes. People gathered outside hospitals, studios, and the gates of the Jackson home. It did not matter where you lived. Everyone felt the loss. Later, the investigation confirmed that the overdose was not an accident. Murray had used the wrong drug in the wrong environment and failed to monitor him properly. He was found guilty of involuntary manslaughter. Michael's comeback never happened. His return to the stage never came. All that remained was the shock, the questions, and a silence no one was ready for. To understand the full meaning of his life, we need to look at the legacy he left behind and the way the world changed after he was gone. After Michael Jackson passed away, something unexpected happened. The noise, the rumors, the criticism, and the nonstop judgment finally went quiet. In that silence, people began to look at him differently. They remembered the music first, then the performances, then the moments that shaped entire generations. Fans around the world held candlelight gatherings. Radio stations played his songs non-stop. People who had grown up watching him dance now shared stories of how his music helped them through hard times. Even those who once doubted him felt the weight of losing someone who had influenced culture on a scale almost no one else ever reached. In the years that followed, more information came out about his illnesses, his vitiligo, and the pressure he faced during the scandals. Some of the people who once stood against him changed their statements. Investigators questioned old testimonies. Many began to realize that parts of the story the public believed for years were incomplete, or in some cases, completely false. But Michael's real legacy was not in courtroom files or newspaper articles. It was in the impact he left on humanity. He broke racial barriers in music and television. He reshaped music videos into an art form. He brought people together across countries, languages, and cultures. His influence can still be seen in artists today, from dance moves to vocal styles to entire creative visions. Beyond entertainment, Michael gave millions to charity. He visited hospitals, supported children's foundations, and used his platform to bring attention to global issues. These actions rarely made headlines, but they meant everything to the people he helped. Even with all the noise around his name, one fact became clear after his death. Michael Jackson was more than a pop star. He was a symbol of creativity, vulnerability, ambition, and resilience. He carried the weight of fame in a way few could survive, and yet, through every high and low, he never stopped trying to give the world something meaningful. Today, his songs still top charts. His videos still break records. His influence still shapes the music industry. And for millions, he remains a reminder that genius often comes with a heavy price. But the light it creates can last for generations. His story is tragic, inspiring, and complicated. But in the end, it proves one thing. Even after everything he faced, Michael Jackson never truly disappeared. He lives in the echoes he left behind.